All right, so this talk is not going to be so long, so let's just get started. There's a lot to talk about. I'm Arel. You may have seen me in the panel earlier. I was part of the core team for more than a year as a developer, and right now I'm more on the managerial side. We have a couple of outsourced engineers in env0 managing them on our side. I'm also still involved with the project and the people working on the project. And yeah, I'm a principal engineer in env0. And I'm here to mostly talk about the OpenTofu specific features that we've added over this time. Some of them, not all of them, we don't have a lot of time. So as we've mentioned earlier, our main goal in OpenTofu is to be the project you want to use for infrastructure as code. And we do that by listening to the community and making features that people actually want. So all of the features I'm going to talk about today are features that have been requested for a long while. And I'm going to focus on the four main ones for me, which is State encryption. If you guys don't know, by default, your state is saved locally and in plain text, and all of your secrets will just stay there, and that's not great. The second feature is early evaluation, the POC that started by Christian, which basically means that with backend configurations and with module sources, you can use variables or locals when you define them. Exclude flag is very simple. You would have an exclude flag to exclude a specific resource or module from your apply or plan. And provider iteration, which allows you to use for each in your provider configuration, which is helpful for a bunch of reasons, mostly using multiple regions and having configuration with multiple regions be more flexible. So let's get started. State encryption. Let's say you're using some module, RDS Aurora in this case. If you go over the description, there's a lot of inputs. If you take a look at master password, it does explicitly tell you to watch out. It might show up in logs, and it is stored in the state. And it is stored as plain text. It's not just this one. Everything else that is a secret. The module author was kind enough to write that down, but that's the default behavior if there's a secret used in your configuration or just in your state. So it might not be a problem for you if you're using a backend that has encryption, but that's the default behavior, and we wanted to have a native solution in OpenTofu, so you could do that even if you want to save your state locally. So what we did is simply introduce native encryption. In order to do that, you just need to write an encryption block, and there you would pick your key provider. Here we're using AWS KMS. We have other solutions from other cloud providers, or just use some static passphrase. You pick your method of encryption. Right now, I think there's only this one, but we built the feature in such a way that you can add more providers, key providers, and methods pretty easily if we'd like in the future. And then you pick if you want state encryption, or also we also allow for plan file encryption, because plan can also have that in plain text. And you pick your method here, and that's it. When you run tofu apply, if this is a new configuration, the configuration will be applied and your state will be encrypted. That's it. Next one. Early evaluation. So let's talk about this specific requirement. Let's say I have a configuration that I want it to be shared with multiple stages. I have development, staging, production, and I want the configuration to be mostly the same, so I don't want to do that in multiple folders and with different configuration, but maybe I'll have like a different instance type, so I need to handle that in some way, but also I would want, for my specific reasons, to have a different backend, or at least a different bucket if I'm using S3 backend. So how I would have to do this today is have separate backend configurations. Here we have one for a bucket with the name dev and a bucket with the name prod. And I would have to, in the a CI/CD when I do init to pick the correct backend configuration, which might not be that bad, but also when you consider that you have other variables and things you need to account for, like your instance type probably is related in some way to some variable you're using, then you need to make sure the variable and the backend configuration match, otherwise you would either have an error or an inconsistent plan, which I think the latter is even worse. So it would have been nice if you could just use a variable here, and that's it. And that's basically what early evaluation means. It's for backends and module sources. So with module sources, you can use variables, and it can help you use a specific version you'd like. In different cases, you can change what version you'd like to use. So here now we have a single backend TF file. We created a variable called env, which is for, in our case, like staging, dev, production. And we have a local that helps you map that environment to your bucket name, in this case. And in your backend configuration, you just use that local, and that's it. All you have to do is when you run init and apply is just use that single variable. And now if you have like an instance type you would like to use that's different between dev and prod, you do the same with the local, and it's pretty easy. So this is early evaluation. I think we had that in 1.8. And now I'm going to talk about two features we've added in 1.9, exclude flag. As I said before, my personal favorite. It's pretty simple to explain. Let's say you have this configuration, 3 resources, and you would like to only apply one of them, create only one file, or update only one file. So you have the target flag. For that, you write target and pick the resource. And that's it. Your next plan and apply will only take that one into account. Now, what happens if you'd like to apply everything but a specific resource? Right now, technically, you just have to write a bunch of target flags for everything you do want to apply, and that's not great. So this is a feature request that has been around for, I think, a decade, and it's the top upvoted one, and that's why I wanted to do that one. And yeah, it's pretty simple. We now have an exclude flag. You just write up exclude and pick the resource or module you would like to exclude. And that resource and module and every other resource or module dependent on that will be excluded from the plan and apply. It's basically an exact inverse of how target works. So that's it. Pretty simple. It can be very helpful in situations where a specific service of yours is down, or you just want to ignore something specific and not block your applies and your CI/CD. So that can be very helpful. And we've seen a lot of positive response from social media, and that for me was very great to see. So yeah, this is Exclude flag. Now we'll go to the final feature, provider iteration. Now, let's say other than now AWS provider adding that in 6.0, the region meta argument, but that is still true for GCP and other providers. Let's say you would like to use multiple regions with your configuration. And you want to do that in a single workspace and not have like a workspace per region. So in order to do that, you would need 2 provider blocks for yourself, one for here it's US and one for EU. And you'd need to also duplicate your resources, one for each provider. So here I want to have an RDS cluster per region. That's what I have to do right here. And this is not ideal. What happens if I want to add another region right now and just duplicate all of my configuration for that region? It's going to be a pain in the butt. So provider iteration basically means that we can use for each. As you can see here, we have a variable regions. We use for each in the provider definition, and then we pick the region by that variable, that h.value. And in the resource itself, you do for each as well, and we pick the correct key for the provider. We pick a cluster, one for US, one for EU. And that's it. And if we want to add another region and have our resources be created when we have another region, that's easy. We just add a variable and we plan, and we're going to see a bunch of resources being created. This one, and if we have more that we've defined like that, that's going to happen for them as well. And it's also supported for modules. So another instance of the module is going to be added when you add another region. Yeah, so that's it for the features. There are a few more that I haven't discussed, and just to be clear, probably a lot of people here know, but OpenTofu is compatible with Terraform. Of course, modules and providers and configuration all compatible, and we also have worked on adding new features that Terraform have added ever since the fork to make sure we're compatible with features people actually want. And if you'd like to vote or actually influence what features we're going to do, this is pretty much one way of how we decide what to do. We have an issue, a sticky issue on the repository saying the top ranking issues. And a lot of the features we did were always from there. And the issues we're doing in 1.10 are also from there. It's OCI registries and the changes to the S3 backend with the log file. So if you'd like, create issues on a repo, vote, and have your voices heard for our next releases. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Join us on Slack. And okay, do it. Time for questions or something?
Sorry, I keep asking questions, but can you go to the slide right before? This was mentioned a little bit earlier today. How does the team balance out like the vocal minority versus kind of general improvements that we know are going to improve the quality of life for a large number of people that might not care about it enough to write about it?
Yeah, so it's a difficult process, and we do a bunch of things for that. I think even for OCI registries, internally in the team at the beginning, we were skeptical if it's really something that people want, or maybe they saw OCI registries and they thought it might be a couple of different things. So that's why we create RFCs and try to clarify everything with the community and get as much feedback as we can from actual people to see, okay, this is something people actually want. I think with Exclude flag and provider iteration, that's where I personally saw the most outside of the OpenTofu issues. I think that's a great place to see what people actually want. When you see that in Reddit and LinkedIn, that's where it's more organic, and then that's how we saw later that people are actually excited about that. But yeah, I think also talking to people person to person, I do that a lot here, and I think that's a great way of hearing what the troubles are. I remember KubeCon America, I've heard like a specific request from like 5 different people, and I was like, okay, maybe it's an issue a lot of people in high scale have, and maybe we want to take a look into that. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
I have one question regards the exclude flag. What about dependencies on the excluded resource?
Yeah, so how target flag works is that when you target a specific resource, then it's not only that specific resource is going to be updated or created. We look in the tree for in the graph itself for any dependencies. So if you use target, you also apply all of the resources that this resource depends on. So exclude does the exact opposite. So if you exclude something, then the resources that are dependent on that, if they use the ID or something, they are also excluded out of the plan. Yeah, it's the exact invert. In the code, I just technically targeted everything else. So that's how it works.